quick version of this up on the Microsoft or M365May.com website. These are a bunch of sponsors that have been sponsoring M365 May, so you probably come across many of these if you're working in the Teams space. So please go and check out what they have to offer and add value to Microsoft Teams. For those that know me, my name is Damien Margaritis, based in Melbourne, Australia, as Microsoft Certified Master. I do a bit of blogging as well at DMUnified.com, and I've been involved with the meetup for quite a few years now, and also look after some of the content for the meetup in Brisbane as well. Having different location user groups is kind of less important now, I guess. I guess anyone can join these, but for the time being, we have separate meetups. All right, let's get into it. So first up, what's new in Teams? Teams news and updates. So I thought I'd start with all the ones that anyone that is a proponent of Zoom will call out and say, hey, we can do this, why can't we do it in Teams, right? We get this all the time. So I thought I'd start there. So raise your hand is coming to Teams. It's actually rolling out right now. So if you're having those larger type meetings, or even something like this, right, where we've got many more people on the call, and we want a better way of knowing if someone's available or if someone wants to say something. So they can press a button, we get a notification, and we can then say, yes, what's your question, basically. So really useful in a classroom type scenario. So something that people have really asked for. Same for 3x3 video. So if you don't have this already, this is rolling out this month. So most tenants that I've seen actually have this now. No configuration change required from your end, it will just start happening. So you'll get that 3x3 video, and Microsoft does have on the roadmap increasing that out a little bit further. So really great to see that we're seeing that in the Teams client as well. Of course, we also have background effects now, so we can have those custom background effects. Ray, that's another thing that people have really been waiting for. Thought I'd have a bit of fun with those ones. So this is something I've actually had in preview for some time, probably about 9 months. And there's reasons why that we'll get to that it took a little bit longer to come to market, but it is actually here now. We have actually also seen some clever individuals come up with background effects using Bing images. There's a link at the bottom of this. So basically having custom images that you can pick from that change with the Bing images that are used, that you often see in the background on your Windows 10 device or whatnot. So there's a link there on how you can do that. But this last part here, so this can actually be controlled via policy. And this is where it took a little bit longer for Microsoft to get this feature to market. So in order to make sure they adhere to the security, privacy, the rest of the framework that Microsoft adheres to, we've got to make sure that we can actually control these things. So there is a additional setting in the CS Teams meeting policy where I can control what my users can or can't do with background blur and custom background effects or backgrounds. So I can have no filters, where of course no filters are available. I can limit it to blur only. I can limit it to blur and default backgrounds, the ones that actually come out of the box, like my background today. Or I can allow all filters, including custom images, and the user gets a little button at the top where they can kind of click and upload their own image. So if you've got particular policy requirements, maybe you're a school and you can just imagine what students might get up to if they can have their own custom backgrounds, you have some administrative control of that. So Microsoft wasn't really ready to release background effects until we had this kind of control. It's an important feature to have. For anyone that wants to see where that setting is, that's the Teams meeting policy. You'll see it listed near the bottom there. Was there a question there? I did hear a sound. Did someone have a question? No? All good. I shall continue. I'm just going to elevate you as well, Peter Tomas, so you've got some extra controls. There we go. All right. What else is new? So Microsoft 365 live events. So anyone that's not using those today, you might recall there was something called Skype Broadcast some time ago. That is now live events in Microsoft Teams. If you haven't seen how to create that, if you're in the calendar tab in Teams and you have the new meeting button or schedule meeting button in the top right, little drop down arrow next to it, you can drop that down and select live events. So even back in the Skype for Business days, it was had some limits in how many people you could have in these sessions and how many sessions you could have in a tenant and how long they could go for and all those types of things. What Microsoft have done in response to the current COVID situation is they've temporarily increased these numbers. So the number of attendees is actually increased from 10,000 to 20,000. The number of concurrent events that can be run per tenant has gone up from 15 to 50. The actual duration of the event has gone up from 4 hours to 16 hours, and this temporary increase will be in place until July 1st, 2020. Now, whether or not that's extended or whether Microsoft decides to keep it, I'm not sure. However, we do know that it will be in place until at least July 1st. So I don't have any customers that are having more than 10,000 participants just yet on live events. We have thousands, but not tens of thousands. But if you have that use case, then this can be covered off with live events now. I should also point out that live events can be hosted and run from Teams. It is actually hosted on the Stream service, kind of on the back end. And even if we do it from Yammer, it is still Stream that is hosting that live event. One-to-one recording. So who remembers in Skype for Business, if I wanted to record, I had to escalate to a conference and then it would let me record. Pretty similar with Teams. If I was just called somebody and decided I want to record that call, I couldn't do it. I had to turn it into a conference. Now I can do that. So I can just drop down little ellipses and start recording, even if it's just a point-to-point call. Quite useful. And that will record to Microsoft Stream in the cloud. Okay, so local media optimization. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this and explain why this is useful. So basically what this means is that we have more control over how media traffic flows between Teams client and session border controllers, or the devices that perform, often they sit at the perimeter of our network and are the perimeter device between a telco and Microsoft Teams or existing telephony equipment and Teams, etc. So basically, this allows us to do a number of different things. It allows us to keep media local, and I ignore that diagram for now because I'm going to go through in simpler terms in a sec. But basically, it allows us to keep media local. I'll touch on that again. We allow media streams directly between the Teams client and the SBC. So if you've come from the Skype for Business world, you'd be familiar with this, media bypass and things like that. If I was inside the network, I could have media go from my client to the SBC on the same network, which is the most optimal path. We couldn't really do that with Teams easily up until the release of local media optimization. So that's and we have this ability to build out a virtual network topology of SBCs within Office 365, basically. So if I go through some of the steps and how this fits together. So first up, we have Teams in the cloud. In this scenario, we have a data center and we have a branch office location, and we have a user that's sitting in the branch. We might also have some SBCs. So we might, traditionally in Skype for Business days, we might have had an SBA in that branch site. These days, we don't need the SBA bit, so we just have the SBC. And we've also got another SBC that I'm going to refer to as a proxy SBC in the data center that forms part of our telephony routing network. Now, the client itself, from a signaling perspective, communicates with the cloud when I want to make a phone call. When that happens, SIP signaling communicates with the proxy SBC, in this case, that sits in my data center, which has a direct route set up to Microsoft Teams. So I should call that out. The local media optimization is for direct routing. That signaling can then pass through to the other SBC. However, you will notice here that the media is actually connecting locally from my local client to that SBC and out to the PSTN network. Okay, so this is something we couldn't really do before with Teams without kind of hairpinning to the outside world and back again and a bunch of other things, right? So basically this gives us a scenario where, let's say I have a branch office. I don't want to put a direct route with a public IP address off my SBC that's located there, but I do have another SBC that has a direct route to the cloud that I can leverage. And when we set up this configuration in Office 365, we actually have this concept now of like the SBC for the route and a proxy SBC. So we're actually, when that call comes in, we're actually telling this SBC, pass that call over here, and we're going to negotiate media locally. Okay, so a lot more control about what we can do with media. If that person happened to be outside the network, so sitting out here, then there's signaling, same thing, HTTP REST to the cloud, just like I'm signing into the Teams client, that signaling path. And then I'd use this transport relay to, oops, let me go back, to proxy media to that SBC in my data center, which will then pass the media through to that other SBC that will get me access to the PSTN network in that local site. So I can still look after users that are outside the network. Okay. Now, local media optimization has a couple of different modes. So we can do this thing called always bypass, right? So imagine I have a much bigger distributed environment with gateways all over the place, and I've got a user on the internal network. Mode 1 means that if it's routable, if I'm on the internal network and I make a call and I can kind of see or access that SBC, that media will always bypass. So if I'm in Sydney and the gateway is in Perth and I make a call that's using a route that uses that gateway, or the SBC I should say, it'll always send media there. But what I can also do is mode 2, use for local users only. So in this case, I can use network information to make a decision about whether I bypass or whether I don't. So for anyone that came from the Skype for Business world, this might sound pretty familiar, right? We had this capability with Skype for Business. I could enable media bypass, and then I had a choice. I could always bypass media, or I could use sites and region configuration in order to support bypass. So how that works is I'm in location A, and there's also an SBC next to me that's in location A. When I make that call, based on my subnet, it knows I'm in the same network site as that SBC, route media locally, like the diagram I showed you before was showing. Happy days. If by chance I happen to be in the US and I make the same phone call, it looks in my network configuration, it sees that I'm not in the same network location, so it will actually go and find the local point of presence or the transport relay locally in the US, backhaul over the Microsoft network, hop off locally in Australia and get access to the SBC that way. The benefit of that scenario is that I'm using Microsoft's low latency network for most of my communication there, for most of my most of the hops, all the way back to Australia to then hop off onto my gateway. Right? In the Skype for Business world, if we didn't have that kind of level of smarts, we didn't have like Anycast IP to figure out where I am in the world and make an intelligent decision, right? So this is why it's Microsoft's guidance now. You know, don't centralize your internet, like get onto the Microsoft network as close as possible to where a user is. But you can see here how if I'm a small organization, or maybe I'm only in Australia and all my network links are really good, I might always bypass. If I have a global footprint, then I might use site and region configuration. Okay. There's a bit that goes into it. There's some kind of trusted IP configuration you have to do, which basically tells the cloud, are you inside your network or are you outside the network? Because otherwise, how does Teams know? But the configuration is pretty good. So before I move off that, any questions specific to local media optimization? I know it's a big topic, but I thought I'd ask now before I move on.
Hey, Damien, Mark to Blanchard. Just a quick question. For that proxy path, is that going to route all the way through that proxy SBC? Is going to be involved in that traffic all the way through? And is it going to go from its private network over the WAN, or is it going to go over the internet there?
It'll go over the private network. So basically what this allows you to do, so if we think of another scenario, so before this came along, if I had, let's say, an existing Skype for Business environment that had 20 gateways dotted around the world or whatever, or even just around Australia, I would have had to put either a direct route off every one of those SBCs or kind of configure my own kind of logic to get calls to route from gateway A to gateway B, right? So call comes in, matches this pattern, routes as the second gateway, or that kind of configuration. What we do with this configuration is I might have 2 central data centers with a direct route on each. So they're Microsoft has visibility of those via direct route. But what we've told the cloud in our configuration is these users using a gateway further kind of downstream, So when that call hits that SBC, there's actually extra custom headers kind of thing in the SIP packet that basically say this is a call for that gateway over there, and the SBC will send it there using information it obtained from the route configuration in the cloud, rather than you having to configure kind of custom SIP trunks for different number ranges and things like that. So you'd still have an internal SIP trunk between those SBCs that you set up, so it knows where to go, or it can actually get there, but we don't have to tell it the routing information of that SBC, if that makes sense. So we have this concept of Microsoft visible proxy SBCs and then privately IP addressed internal SBCs. So that internal SBC does not have a direct connection to the internet at all.
Cool, thank you.
Cool. All right, some other new things, Teams news and updates. So, that GIF doesn't look too good. So communities, or the Yammer app in Microsoft Teams, so basically just an improved Yammer experience coming within the Teams clients, just completing that inception loop of inner loop, outer loop stuff. So if you're in the Yammer community, I don't play with Yammer all that much these days. We're actually using org-wide teams to do our stuff, but for larger organizations, Yammer still makes a lot of sense. Definitely something to check out if you're looking at kind of enterprise social for larger organizations. Okay. Real-time noise suppression. We have that. I was going to play the video to show you. Switch speakers. Let me just change my sound settings so you can actually hear this. Please hold. One little bit of setup that I forgot to do. Apparently, if I do that and do that, now I'll play it.
If you're on a call and you're joined in a meeting and now somebody is starting to eat some chips, opening the chip bags, you can hear a lot of background noise, and it's very hard to understand me very clearly. Now with the power of AI, Teams can remove that background noise and you can understand me very clearly.
Cool. Could everyone hear that? Maybe just one yay or no?
Yeah, no worries.
Yep.
Cool, awesome, that worked. So yeah, quite a nice feature. We're starting to see more, technology kind of driven from an AI perspective to kind of remove some of that background noise that we often used to rely on our devices to do for us, right? Now there is some logic in the client. So if I plug in like a good noise cancelling device, it will maybe make a decision to let that device do the noise cancelling as opposed to the Teams client. But if I don't, if I just got my laptop open or something like that, then Teams will have the ability to kind of limit some of the background noise, which is quite a nice feature. So some great updates around real-time noise suppression.
If you're on a call.
Next. Read receipts. So see when someone reads your message. Feature availability can be controlled by admins and also configurable from the Teams client. Excuse me. So if you open your client and go to privacy settings, you can switch this on or off. There are a couple of people in my organization that have switched it off, and it really annoys me because I like to sit there and wait until someone has read my message. But when they read it, you'll see this little icon appear next to the chat message, right? So you know that they've seen it, and you can appropriately follow them up when they haven't responded in precisely 5 seconds. So that's a feature that you should see now rolling out across Teams. I'm going to guess that that's James Arbor's background, so I'm going to mute him. I'm also going to make him a presenter. Here we go. All right, next. Pin your favorite apps. So small little setting, but a nice one. So if you haven't seen that, you can organize your apps a little bit better on the left side of your Teams client to fit the way you work. So if you click the ellipses in your client, you can kind of choose what you want to pin, hopefully, if it lets you do that. They should be able to right-click one of those apps and click pin, and then you'll see it in your sidebar. So really good for any apps that you use regularly. Of course, we also have an administrative way to do that. So using app permissions policies and setup policies and stuff like that, we can actually decide what apps get pinned for our end users based on policy. And we've used that recently, for example, with things like the crisis communications app that Microsoft kind of made a pack available that we've been using for some of our customers. We're able to pin that up to the sidebar for our customers. It's really good. Okay, small update. I didn't know about it until I read about it. But basically, so in Teams, if you write a chat message, like a normal kind of update message in a channel, you can edit that message. We've been able to do that for some time. But one thing we couldn't do was edit cross-channel messages. So if you're not doing these, what you can do from Teams is actually write a chat message and send it across multiple channels. Okay. So if you send that, or up until recently, if you sent that message and there was a typo or you hadn't included all the channels that you actually wanted that message to go out to, you couldn't do anything about it. You just had to look silly and try to do something else. So now you can actually edit that. So I can go in and not only edit the text, but I could then add another channel that I missed and then send it on. So it's a bit of an update there. Tag, you're it. So we actually have this new concept, just another layer of kind of targeting people called tags. So now I can actually go and create a new tag. Let's in this example, it's called HR. And I can add people to that. And then if I want to, I can send messages to HR, or I can at HR, mention HR, and actually speak to people that might be located kind of across different channels or whatnot. So you might have groups of people, it might be project managers, it might be something like, I don't know, some other group of people that sit across multiple channels, teams, etc. You now have a way to target them as well. That's a nice feature as well. Okay, work offline in the Windows desktop app. You might have accidentally seen this if you disconnected from the network at some point and seen that you still had some capability in your client. So first phase of rollout is complete, where Teams users will be able to open Teams when no network is available. I can create and read messages, browse previously viewed channels, calendar summaries, all that kind of stuff. This is what it looks like. So if I was in a calendar, you'll see here it says can't sync at the moment. We'll try again soon. But even though I'm not connected to the internet, I can still get to chats with people. I can still see documents that they might have shared with me that had already synced to my client, kind of thing. I can click on it and then kind of interface with the document. So it is quite a nice feature. That airplane mode type thing where I might want to respond to a bunch of people, and as soon as I get network back, then it'll send those chats on. Okay, another little improvement here. So in the Teams calendar, if you right-click Teams calendar meetings now, you can actually choose to view, or I might want to chat with the participants, join the meeting online, or change my acceptance. So whether I accept, if I'm tentative, or I want to decline that meeting, I can do it just with a right click. The booking app, so using the booking app directly inside Teams. So this is where a large enterprise can create booking pages and relevant services and schedule for the many appointment needs they might have. Okay, I actually started playing with this but didn't have the right licenses at the time, so I couldn't do it to show you more. But basically I can have the bookings app pinned to the left-hand side like I have in my window there, and I can interface with it that way. So bringing that into the client. So if you haven't seen the bookings app before, it's useful in kind of medical or any other kind of business that makes bookings with people from the outside world, not necessarily from just from within your organization or anything like that. Okay, end the meeting for everyone. So this is a new capability for meeting organizers where I can actually click the ellipses when I'm in a meeting and click end meeting. So think of a scenario like education, where me as a teacher, if I just kind of jump off the call, if I just leave the call, that call stays up with all the kids and they can do whatever they want. Similarly, if I'm recording or something like that, I might not want to just leave the meeting. I might actually want to physically, not physically, but end the meeting. I'm sure you know what I mean. So when I do that, everyone is kicked out of the meeting. Okay? So a nice new feature there. Just to improve security and handling, particularly in environments where the other participants who knows what they might get up to. We have the ability to announce when callers join a meeting. So that's a setting that you can configure when you set up a Teams meeting now, if you go and look at the settings, you can actually update it and decide whether you want to turn that on or off. So we've had that on, conferencing platforms in the past. A bunch of different platforms will be able to do that. So that's something that where an end user can control. There is also a setting to let attendees who dial in bypass the meeting lobby, whether or not we want people to dial in from essentially an unauthenticated phone. If I'm dialing in and putting the code in, I'm not an authenticated user per se. I could be anyone. We do have this option here as well. These settings are controllable controlled via admin policies as well. So if you don't want people to have that capability within your organization globally or for a set of users, you can of course control that. Okay. One other nice addition is the ability to add system audio to live events. So in the demo I did before, just showing the rustling packet, that's me in a Teams meeting, a standard Teams meeting, able to share my system audio into the meeting, which has been a really great feature to have, particularly if you're trying to show videos or whatnot when you're in a remote meeting in these current times that we're in. That capability has been extended to live events. So now when I'm running a live event, it works the same way. That presenting bar that I get at the top of my screen when I share a desktop, there's that little icon there. In that state, it's actually off. I have to click it to turn it on. And you may have seen in my demo that I didn't have my audio device in my computer matching my speakerphone that I was using. So that's a prereq to look out for. But basically, I can get audio from my PC into that live event. Okay. Just do that. Okay. Channel analytics have arrived. So if anyone hasn't seen this, if you go into Teams now and you go to the ellipses next to a team at the team level, and you click on Manage Team, then you will actually see this additional tab here, Analytics, and you can see the analytics for that specific team. Now, in this case, this is a demo team and a demo tenant of mine, so there's not a lot of data, not a lot of things going on there, but you can see how this might be useful. I can see how many users are in it, how many posts, replies, how many apps I'm using, how many meetings I've had. So pulling some of the power of Microsoft, Graph API and what they do in Power BI and other ways, shapes, forms, but pulling that into the individual team, which is a nice new feature as well. Some other little features to mention on mobile. So say no to echo. So Teams will automatically mute your mic and speaker to prevent echo if you're in the same room. I often join from my mobile as a companion device when I'm in Teams meetings if I want to present something else or control the lobby or the roster or something. Hello. All good. So that's a new feature that's come to mobile. We also have background blur for iOS. I believe this is only for iOS. I'm happy for someone to tell me yay or nay if it's on Android. I'm pretty sure it's not. I think it's only an iOS feature. The background blur capability is on the iOS client or is rolling out to the iOS client at the moment. So when you're on your tram, and we're allowed to be back on trams, it might be a nice feature if you're actually on a video call. Another new feature, swap views and pin them. So I didn't have time to actually grab a little GIF of this, but basically this means when I'm on the mobile client, which is a really powerful client, if you never did meetings on mobile with the Skype for Business client because it wasn't as good as the desktop client, definitely give the Teams client a go. It's way, way better. It works really well. I can share PowerPoint from OneDrive. I can share what's on the screen of my mobile device. I can do all kinds of things. The one thing it was missing was the ability to kind of swap between presentation view and then swipe my finger to get back to the participants and pin the participants from my mobile device. I just want to see one person on, big. So that's now on mobile as well. We also have the ability on mobile to set quiet hours. I believe this is an iOS feature only. I actually use this on my Teams client. If you go into the settings on your Teams mobile client, you can go and set the quiet hours. So I think mine are set pretty loosely, I think it's like 12 a.m. to 7 a.m. I don't get pings notifications, so I can, get some shut eye. So if you haven't seen that, that's a nice kind of, I guess it's actually even a nicer feature in the current climate. We can kind of try to separate work and home duties to some extent. Okay, we have also had a desk phone update. We have a new Teams app version that's rolled out to all the phones. Some of the things to call out about the update, and it's not just for the T55, it's for all phones. We now have favorites or speed dials that are added to calls. So when you have favorites in your Teams client, you actually see it on the phone of your device, which is a nice thing to have. We also have some additional capabilities. We now have custom ringtones. So I can select a different ringtone. I can also have different ringtones for normal calls versus delegate calls and whatnot on the phone. I can manage delegates from a phone. So I can actually go and make someone a delegate for me, things like that. I did see that James Arbor just posted. He'll have a video up about that soon, just trying to get his VP59 back. He's let everybody know. Thank you, James. Auto dial for extension dialing. So what this is, I'm sure you remember on the old phone system days where we dialed 0 and then dialed 8 digits, and it would automatically know that's what I needed to dial and just dial a number. I never had to hit the call button. In the Skype for Business and to some extent the Teams world, of course, we dial a number and then we have to hit call. We basically have to tell it to phone that person. Now, as long as the number format is in the dial plan in the cloud, so it's 3-digit dialing, whatever dialing an organization wants to do, I can pick up a handset, dial the 3-digit extension, I wait 3 seconds and it'll automatically start calling that person. So I no longer have to hit the call button. It has come up as an issue with some of our clients where they're so used to just dialing it and waiting that they wait and wait and wait and don't realize that they have to press the call button, and it becomes an issue. So that's a new feature that's rolled out. There's also some device management updates to support device categorization in the Teams Admin Center and some other bug fixes, the company portal application. So if you want to update Teams phones, you can do that from the Teams Admin portal. If you haven't seen that already, go to the Teams Admin portal, look at devices, look at phones. All your phones that are signed in will be listed there, and you can select to update the firmware from the back end. You don't have to do anything on the phone. Okay, so to kind of round it out, a couple of things that are coming. So the first one is we are going to have compliance recording for Microsoft Teams. Basically what this is a mechanism where I can record from the cloud into one of a few different providers that Microsoft is interfacing with. So Mnemonics and Verint are ones that I've come across before, and Audio Codes, ASC, NICE, Redbox, all certified for Microsoft Teams recording, and more importantly, compliance recording. So the way this will work is when I have a phone call, and actually technically all phone calls now in Teams are conferences in the cloud, right? The recording service interfaces at that kind of conferencing service level in the cloud, and then based on policy, we decide whose calls are recorded. Okay, so this is still in preview. We're still waiting for this to come out, but we're getting pretty close. So if you have any customers that have recording requirements, and we're doing it today with, say, a recording server off a session border controller or doing SIP-rec off a gateway or something like that, you will be able to do this in the cloud where the call recording gets shipped off to one of these providers. For some of them, it might be a server in Azure, in your own Azure tenant. For some, it's actually a fully managed service. Okay, so hasn't all been finalized just yet, but keep an eye out for that. Something to look forward to. I would say this, along with contact center, probably the two things that we're waiting for the most from a kind of more advanced call capability perspective with Teams that allow us to get off our on-premises Skype for Business server environments. So we still have plenty of organizations that have Skype for Business on-prem with a contact center still associated with it. And the only reason that still exists is that we don't have a contact center available in the cloud, really. So we're at what we call phase 1 with contact centers, where they're able to route calls to a Teams user using direct routing. We refer to this as phase 1. It will, however, there will be a phase 2 to look forward to where we have more kind of API application integration. And if I was a betting man, I would say that would have, a contact center client within a tab, within a channel of a team, or maybe even as an app down the sidebar of Teams or something like that is how I would imagine it would work. Still waiting on some of those APIs to open up from the Microsoft side around calling and whatnot. But today we do have this, what we call phase 1, right? So we can route calls, it's just kind of dumb. It's not application aware or anything like that. There is also the ability to do some presence integration at the moment. So some of the contact center providers are able to pull the presence from Teams. And so even though the call is just routing over a direct route, I can at least see the presence of a user from my contact center application before I decide to transfer it to them on Teams. That does exist today. And final one here, what's coming, better together over Bluetooth, so the ability to control my phone wirelessly, basically, from my Teams client. So if you've come from the Skype for Business world, you might remember the original Better Together back on the CX series phone type days, replaced by Better Together over Ethernet in the VBX days. It'll be Better Together over Bluetooth in the Teams days, right? And you'll see here I've got a phone, I've answered a call on it, but I still have a kind of call control button that appears here. Hasn't been released yet, but it's on the roadmap. And a couple smaller announcements from our vendors. AnyNode, who do the hosted SBCs or virtual SBCs, they've added some additional features to version 4.0, local media optimization, multi-tenancy, REST API and PowerShell capabilities, and some E911 emergency call capabilities. So these are guys based out of Germany, but are doing a bit in the hosted SBC world. And we also have from EPOS certification that's come for these headsets. So the impact range of wired headsets that were Skype for Business certified now are for a firmware upgrade to be certified for Microsoft Teams. You can use EPOS Connect or EPOS Manager to update these headsets. So if you happen to have EPOS, which is closely affiliated with Sennheiser, right? So if you see EPOS, you might see some co-branded stuff like that headset there, EPOS Sennheiser. If you have those headsets and they're Skype for Business certified, they will be certified for Teams as well. Just have to go and grab the firmware. Thank you, James. This is working well. James is actually going and finding those updates and he's posting updates in the chat as we go. Fantastic. Love it.
It's better than my usual heckling, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like silent James Arbour heckling. It's great. There he is. All right. And another one, as James did at the last session, we'll probably do this at every session. Don't forget that Skype for Business Online will be retired July 31st, 2021. So if you're not already thinking about it, if you're not doing it, if you're using Skype for Business Online and you haven't started that Teams migration journey, now's probably a pretty good time to start. A lot of organizations, it was fast-tracked due to the COVID pandemic, right? So we've seen a lot of organizations that we work with that, had the plan in place, but ended up doing it a hell of a lot more rapidly than they initially thought, which is fine. There might be some cleanup and tidy up to come back and do at some point. But if you're not doing this already, you're not planning for it, and you are Skype Business Online, please, now's the time to start looking at it. Keep in mind, this is online. So server will be supported out to at least 2025, I think is the date for server deployments. So if you've got Skype for Business server, you will still have a bit of time up your sleeve, but probably a good opportunity to look at what you're doing with that as well. Now that we're starting to see a lot less reasons and blockers to what we can do on the cloud. And once we tick off recording and contact center, that might be the last kind of things that you need in order to push off that on-prem infrastructure. Okay, and with that, that is the end of the session, and I'm going to open it up to, it was Ask Me Anything, but it's actually Ask Us Anything, right? So Ask Us Anything. So who we have today, I'm just going to stop presenting my screen. Please hold.
Well, Megan was asking if your cat's hungry, Damien.
Oh, you can hear my cat. Yeah, I've got a speakerphone today. He sits outside the door. Yes, he does. So before we start, I thought I'd just introduce who we have on the panel. So actually, I'll let them introduce themselves. So maybe Peter and Vakhtang, you can introduce yourselves to start with.
Hi, I'm Vakhtang Asatrian. I'm Principal Program Manager in Teams Engineering. Most of you know me.
Thank you. And Peter.
Yeah, hey everyone. Pete Thomas, Teams Technical Specialist at Microsoft, part of the Modern Workplace Group.
Great. And I introduced myself already. James, for people that don't know you.
Yeah, so I co-host the user group here with Damien down in Melbourne. I'm a Microsoft MVP and talk about all things Skype and Teams. So, yeah.
Great. And then we also have the Strands, Lauren and Megan Strand. Please introduce yourselves.
It muted me as soon as I tried to speak. Hello, everybody. I'm Megan. I am a Microsoft MVP and the principal consultant at InSync. I lead the adoption and change management stream. So all things user experience.
And I am Lauren Strand, married to her, also Microsoft MVP, and also work at InSync. My role is as the team's product manager. So it's my job to make this amazing tech actually land with our customers in ways that they can use it.
Great. Okay, so now that we've got the intros out of the way, this is the interesting part. Who has some questions for us, collective group?
It was so
Cameron
clear.
has got a question there. Cameron, go ahead.
You can type, you can ask. Anything.
Sorry, I was just, the question was, how do you actually know who's got questions? And I saw the thing on the right-hand side. I'm like, oh, now we can see who's got their hand up. That was the question.
Yes. Yes. So what Cameron's talking about in the attendee view, when you raise your hand, we get a view similar to this, which I'll just post in the chat. I get to see who's got their hand up and address them appropriately. I also get a notification in the participants control bar down the bottom to let me know that people have got their hands up.
So James, can you let me know when someone has their hand up? Because I'm using the Uber new preview client that doesn't allow me to see that at the moment.
I switched out of Ring 1.5 for this meeting.
Yeah.
Damien, your question. How you going, mate?
Good. Hi. Yeah, sorry, Damien from Australia Bella here. So I've got two questions, kind of a little bit education focused, if you like. We've started running all our education programs and also classes at home for our dancers remotely, as a lot of people are doing. We're using our lovely Surface Hub for our education program with schools and stuff. One thing which we can't do, which we'd like to be able to do, is control participants' video. So there's two things which we can't do, and I'm just wondering, if anyone can offer some enlightenment about what's happening with them. One is we would like to be able to pin the presenter's video for all the attendees in the call, which we can't do at the moment. So we want to, when we're dealing with a gaggle of kids and we're presenting, we want to make sure they're looking at us. The other thing that we would like to be able to do is prevent attendees, so the kids, from turning on their video until we want them to.
Yep.
So there's stuff that Teams don't offer, and I'm just wondering where that may be in the coming soon bucket, or what they're doing around those kinds of things.
Which tenant you're running? I'm supposed you're not running education tenant, right?
No, that's the challenge. So, I mean, are there some differences in features which we don't get access to because we're not an education tenant, but it's a pain in the bum because we're doing education type stuff as part of our business? So,
Trust me, you don't want to be in an education tenant because then you lose commercial features.
Yeah, there's a very different definition of the very particular features where the education tenants are particularly targeted just to handle education-related activities. There is intent to bring kind of the education features into commercial tenants, because there's a lot of our commercial customers started doing education, and not just teaching, also internal training, where you want to pre-provision teams, bring some notes, and you fire up a tenant with a different template and everything is pre-provision. You can actually do this today with the beta graph APIs, but it's a bit of clunky because it doesn't provision some of the core education capabilities you probably want. But as of today, look, there is no clear date. We don't have really that guideline said this is a cutover date when all these features going to come. You either do this education, a lot of stuff, or you are in a commercial tenant, unfortunately. And to be honest, if you're doing a lot of education, you probably want to be more educational, because there are various compliance, very specific enforcements being done, particularly to match the education requirements and standards.
Is an education tenant something we're able to get hold of as a non-education organisation per se? I mean, could we spin up a second tenant for this purpose that is an education tenant?
I think you've got to have an EDU, the specific rules, right, Buckton? You've got to have an EDU domain email address.
Yeah. There are particular rules for matching, so we can spin up. But look, I can get you in contact with one of, there is Wachtang for commercial, there is another Wachtang tab, Jason, just for education. I can put you in contact. Reach me, ping me, wachtang.asatran@microsoft.com. I'll connect you with the education guy, and they can at least give you a bit of a guidance on what actually can be done to address
What are the benefits, guys? Because I'm actually just sitting here thinking, what would be the benefits in a video call in education? Because the calls are the same.
It's not just a video. It's not just
to be
video
able
thing.
to say that we only want the teacher to have video, none of the students.
So those features, would they be different then?
Chat is gone, for example, by default in education. Tenants, kids don't have chat, for example. They can't schedule calls. I mean, of course, they're trying to break stuff, and we are actually right there trying to stop them to break. But if you, for example, in commercial policies, you can go and assign a user education package, which it's automatically you can say it's I think high school student or mid-level mid-school student. It goes in pre-provision policy, but it's a partially it addresses. If you really want that kind of tighter control, you need to be an education tenant.
Okay, you can make those connections. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah. So even today, Megan, when I was just in an internal meeting, we were playing around with the pin, the local pin, and fit to frame and things like that. And I actually made the comment. Obviously it pins it for me, but what if I want to pin it for the entire the entire meeting? We used to have lock the video spotlight in Skype Business, is what that feature was. So I definitely see that there's a use case for it. And even in Teams, as video starts cropping, you kind of lose, if you're trying to show something that's behind you, or you're trying to show a device, you want to have control over what the far end can see. So it definitely has a business use.
And do you want to, I'm trying to move my U-bar, Darren or Damien, my U-bar won't go away. Do you want to interact with the students? Because I'm thinking also live events or what other things are possible, but I'm assuming you want to try and see technique.
We're actually running a combination of live events or meetings, depends on the audience that we are reaching. So we do use live events where it's one-to-many per se, and we're happy with a Q&A type interaction. But then there's more personal school groups, if you like, that we work with a little bit more regularly, which we want some interaction, but we'd still love to have some control over what that is and how that happens.
Great, thanks. I was just curious. To be honest, I have a ballerina and we're getting video downloads, and this is the whole thing. I can understand as a live event, you could just go watch YouTube, not to say that it's quality, but that interaction is important, and you lose a lot when you don't have that, I can imagine. So I was just curious. Thanks. We have a lot of questions in the chat, guys.
Yeah. So Peter, we'll take on your one. I'll answer your second part of the question, but I think Damien will probably take on the first one. Just for everybody, the question was, do we have any way of knowing when 3x3 video will go live for our tenant? Long and short of it is, if you have a look on the 365 roadmap, you'll see that it's rolling out. But with most features like that, it is a staged rollout. Microsoft does slowly push it out, sort of a screen test. So if someone starts getting issues, they'll slow the rollout. But there is no way to say you're getting it on this date. No.
Can I just be a pleasant surprise?
Can I intervene? It's more than that. First of all, 3x3 should be out for everyone by this Saturday. Everyone should get 3x3 by Saturday. But hey, there is always but.
There's a but.
It's only available for desktop, PC, and Mac. It's not coming to mobiles. It's not coming iOS, Android. It's not coming to the web. It is designed, as we call them, to the Angular client. Today's client using the Angular framework, that's what it is going to be happening today. So when you get, it's going to be just your desktop client, just 3x3 plus, you're going to have very particular spec on your machine. I believe if you are, we're going to publish soon. If you are less than 8 gig, we won't let you do it. Less than 8 gig machine, you won't fire up. There is a particular specification which we did a final review. It's going to be published. You need to watch that. And there's a particular cases we're going to turn it off. We're not going to let you. Then next 2-3 weeks, you're going to receive multi-window. That multi-window just going to be for chat only, not for video, because the update that came in this Sunday, which talk about 3x3 June, that's a multi-window video calling and meeting. What you're going to receive now, next couple of weeks, is just going to be multi-window in the chat. No video yet. We just want to give you first the multi-window. Then in end of June, we'll then fire up calling and meetings in that multi-window. And then with that multi-window, there's going to be new client. It's going to be Angular. We're changing to React. It's going to be full React background framework. So again, it's going to be PC and Mac, no web, no iOS, no Android. So eventually iOS and Android 3x3 going to come towards the end of the year. So that's, so it's really, it's very, very specific when we say 3x3, when and what and which client. And if you're not getting it, just check your memory. I think on top of my head, I think the 8 gig is the minimum we want to see on a machine before we fire up 3x3.
I think it was AVX2 as well, like with Blackground Room, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And to get to Peter's other question, and we'll have to try and move through these a bit. Peter was asking if there's any advice on how we can move an on-campus in Vietnam from Skype for Business to on-prem to Teams for Voice. Damien, I'll let you take that one.
Yeah. So the answer is yes. We can definitely do that. And you know, with direct routing to Teams, so we've got a bunch of different options about where we actually put that SBC. So if you have an existing Skype for Business environment on-prem, we put a direct route off the gateway that you're using today, or the SBC. I'm assuming it's a certified SBC like Audio Codes or Ribbon, Sonos, that type of thing. And we can actually migrate off using that method. You also have the ability today to have virtual SBCs as well, both in a hypervisor environment, but also in Azure. So now we're starting to see virtual SBCs deployed in Azure, SIP trunk from your provider over the internet. That's configured to direct route into Microsoft Teams. Makes it really flexible and easy, because I can basically, you know, if I'm a global organization, I'm not limited to where I can get Microsoft calling plans or Telstra calling plans or SoftBank or whatever the calling plan in Japan is. I can't remember. Fuck Tony, you probably know. But with the virtual SBCs, particularly in Azure, I can just say I want a SBC in this region. I'll get a SIP trunk provider of my choice. Now I've got voice for Teams. Really easy. So you might do 2 steps, right? You might hop through your existing SBC infrastructure with a direct route to migrate over time, wherever you wanted to do it in that location. And then phase 2, you might decide, I don't want a physical SBC anymore, and I want a virtual, or I want to put it in Azure. But the short answer is yes, of course, we can absolutely get you from Skype for Business to Teams for Voice. And with the optimizations I talked about, the local media optimization, we've got a lot more tools in the chest about making sure that media stays as close as possible or takes the most efficient route between a Teams user and your telco. Okay. What's next, James? You seem to be the question.
Yeah. So Ben Walters asked a question, and he's asking, with auto attendance and call queues, is there a way to get stats out of the call queue about the calls that are currently waiting, the calls that are abandoned, similar to what we sort of had for with something like Aspera or those call center products in Skype for Business?
Do you want me to answer?
Okay. I'd like you to answer, yeah.
Okay, we're going to deliver two types of reporting. Don't get me for the dates. This is just some idea. We're going to give you historical reporting soon for call queues and automated attendant. We know it's going to come soon. And in parallel, we're actually working just tidying them up, and we're going to give you that soon, very soon. And we are working on, brace yourself for real-time reporting. Yeah, it's the work is happening. Don't quote me, but there is an active work is going on to get your real-time reporting.
And Ben, I actually went on a hunt last week for something that could do this. There's a third party out there whose name escapes me that is saying they can do this today. I think just pulling data from the data sets that are available through CQD and whatnot. But this has definitely been a massive ask of our customers. We need to know what's happening with our auto attendance and call queues, both historically and, real time. No one's asked for that yet, but I'll take it. That'd be amazing.
Yeah, real time will come probably later the year, later the year, because there's a lot of coding needs to be done, a lot of things needs to be exposed. But historical is very, very hot. It's nearly ready.
And there's another one here that probably is good for you or even you, Pete. We haven't heard much from Pete Tomas yet. So from Sean, he's talking about the headless meetings for call queues. So that would be the conference mode for call queues, and when we're expecting to see those released to GA.
Still in tap at the moment, fixing the last few bugs, but believe it will be either by end of this month or next month. So, yeah, optimistically end of May. Realistically, probably June.
Yeah. So if anyone else that wants to know what that means, so basically with call queues and Teams, we had one minor issue where if I answer a call queue from Teams, it was taking a little bit too long for the call setup to complete and to answer the call. So sometimes 6 seconds or something like that. In Skype for Business days with response groups, we used to expect up to 2 seconds, and that was acceptable. But past 2 seconds, we're kind of pushing it a little bit. So Microsoft has come up with a solution for that, which basically in my testing has been sub 1 second. I can answer call queue calls, and it's just going through, just ironing out the last kinks. I actually put it through its paces for a final time last week and couldn't fault it. It's looking pretty good. So I'd say Microsoft's just getting their ducks in a row now before they get it out the door. But we expect to see that hopefully pretty soon, as the guys have said. Yeah.
Absolutely. Should bring that delay down to sub 1 second or 1 second at the worst.
So next one on the rank was David. David King was asking when voice routing will be moving from Singapore to Australia. I can take a little bit of that. We do have media relays here in Australia now. Have been for a little while. The signalling is still going to Singapore, but all the media processing is local. I confirmed with VAC yesterday actually on this one. So yes, it's even on the Microsoft Stocko on their IP addresses and everything.
Yeah. So your media stays in Australia as of a couple of months ago, regardless of whether you do what we call media bypass and you're using transport relays or you're using media relays. We have that infrastructure in Australia today. What may go offshore is the signaling component, right? So when you're on a Teams call, it goes out to a CC server, right? Vakhtang and Pete, the core control server. Core control server talks to the SIP proxy, basically, which then talks to your SVCs for direct routing, that kind of thing. So your client is still, the signaling is going Singapore, Hong Kong, but your media negotiation and the path it takes now stays in Australia regardless of whether you're using media bypass or not.
And since you're talking about the media processing locally, as of, I don't know if you noticed or no, as of probably November, December 2019, we no longer, media processing is no longer done on the high-end ports. You have to make sure you open all 3400 level ports, 78, 79. Transport relays only talk on 3478, and the rest of them are the media processors. So if you blocking 3479, 8081, that's going to be transport relay injected, and then it's not really good. So you will no longer see the high-end ports talking on the media processors, not anymore.
Okay, that's great, because a lot of customers ask about that. I think they're happier with the smaller port range, but we still see a lot that only have, from Skype for Business Days, the UDP 3478 open, and it's also related. Yeah, it's also related to your QoS settings as well. So,
and you see the differences if you still have a bit of a path from the office into 79. And when the client says, "Oh, there's 79," we will definitely prefer to talk to media processors directly. We don't want to transport relays. So that's where you will sometimes see client will go inside the office and hook into your express routes or whatever parts. It gives you 3470 series, 98. So make sure all that 3400 range is open and is no longer. The documentation still says high-end ports. Again, I spoke with the guys. They need to clean it up, but pick any logs. You shouldn't see any more high-end ports media processors talking to.
Cool.
There were some other questions about certified ceiling mic systems for stuff that was certified with MTR. There are a few. Peter has answered that for us in the chat. Thank you. Sennheiser, Shaw, Bose. I used to use the Sennheiser unit at my previous employer. They all work quite well. Just keep in touch with those vendors, and I'll give you a solution. Lauren, what are you doing?
It's a good question, right? Because often questions we get around MTR is how do I put an MTR in a larger room, in a room that's more higher profile, maybe it's an exec boardroom, etc. The ceiling tiles are a great way to get that more sort of professional enterprise level experience with MTR. So absolutely look into that.
And from a coverage perspective, one that we finished a couple of weeks ago, we had one Shaw tile for a room that had 20 seats around a table. It was a huge boardroom, and the Shaw, it's like the size of half a ceiling tile. It was right at the front of the room, kind of towards the front. It picked up everyone as if the mic was right in front of them, and really good in training areas as well, where you've got, tables might move around a bit because they're actually configurable. So if you change the configuration of the room from, say, a Crestron touch panel or something like that, you can actually change the beam form that the ceiling speaker is, the ceiling mic is using. So in those type of multi-use spaces, they're really, really good. They're a little bit more expensive, right? I think they range all the different options between $6,000 and $10,000, something like that, off the top of my head. But in those high-end rooms where you don't want mics on tables and you need to ensure a really good quality experience, then absolutely they're the way to go.
Yeah, and I did sort of skip Rebecca's question, and I do apologise for that, unfortunately. So Rebecca asks a good question. There is one person in my team who always receives Teams updates after the rest of us. What could be impacting that delay? So this one particular user is obviously always getting updates after the rest. Lauren, you're probably the best one to take that. So.
Go,
I've put him
Lauren.
on the spot.
Did you say Lauren?
Lorian, you know what I mean. I do that all the time, and even after
I didn't respond.
Megan's,
like, what?
I watched Megan's video and I was like, that's how you pronounce your name, and I still get it wrong.
And I thought Lorian was going to answer, I just asked him later on.
Yeah, and I heard I pronounced Megan as well.
I might have an idea, or Pete, maybe the Microsoft.
Engineering probably best to answer this question, but
No. Let me see what you know.
I think we need a ping pong ball actually on the screen that's bouncing between all of you as this goes around.
Yeah, I can
do that.
That's fine.
I can do that.
Look, there is a very specific particular sequence of events need to happen before actually the client updates itself. First of all, you log in, we wait roughly 20-30 minutes for inactivity. We ping the home service, and then we go, are there any updates? And if there are updates, we'll pull the updates down in form of the delta. What's going to happen if we try to pull one time, second time, third time, fourth time? If we miss too many updates, we will go and pull the whole client, whole full download. The full download around 100 meg, smaller deltas around 20 meg. Then you pull the service, and then we stage at the background, which means we run a client at the background. Kind of, you have your current client running at the new client. We stage at the background, and when you have got a bit of inactivity, I think the time was around 2 hours, we just swap them. And you basically, when you all come, you see on the screen, oh, you've got, thank you, you've got a new client working. So there's many factors impacting on sorry, I'll just cancel this one. It mainly impacting on how active you are as a person on a PC, which means we probably cannot pull you into updates, or probably updates has been staged and it is not there. The second factor, we implemented the concept called staggered updates. If there are too many clients going to come from your location, originally we used to have these heuristics in the client where whenever you see updates, you just create a bit of a timer before you go. We try to randomize it, but then we realized that, first of all, the IT admins had no control on the line what to do, and at the same time we had no control how this avalanche of requests coming to us. So what we've done, we brought this concept called staggered updates. We see what's coming to us. We put a bit of an algorithm behind, and we tell some of them slow down, we tell some of them go up. So it's very likely it's been probably not too many PCs or too many devices trying to get out. We might be slowing them down, we might be delaying them, and plus some people might be more active than others. So hence you see kind of differences between them. Make sense?
Who has this problem is going to be very satisfied with the detailed answer I'm going to give him. Thank you very much.
The short version is reasons.
There is a reason.
That's what I keep saying, but it's not good enough for them.
Yeah, and the short version is it's a technical throttling thing. It's done so that we don't overload the platform or your infrastructure.
But there is one more probably assurance you can tell users that we do not roll out feature into production until we reach certain minimal levels of the client updates worldwide. So sometimes people say, but marketing said feature is there. Why we're not getting? Because we're waiting when everyone else around the world will get to the latest update. So when we release a feature, you will not end up in a situation half of the office can use it and half of the office can't. So at least we can assure you that if the feature is out, said by Microsoft it's coming, then whenever everyone likely will get it at the same time. So won't be any discrepancies.
Coolio. So the next question was from Damien, which again Peter has answered. Just asking about meeting room devices, or specifically MTRs, how they update. Just to parrot Peter's answer, a Teams meeting room will automatically update itself through Windows Update, and the Teams client will update itself through the Microsoft Store. So as long as when you set those devices up, you correctly allow them to Windows Update and correctly allow them to the store, they will look after themselves. A similar sort of scenario to the Teams client. Again, they will stagger the rollouts. So you may find some rooms update before others. It's done purely as a load sharing thing. So sometimes you might see a new feature like beaconing join will appear on one room, and then a week later it appears everywhere else. It's totally normal.
And generally the polling of new updates, if left untouched, is out of hours. So it'll be like that 2 or 3 in the morning that the MTR will actually go out and find that update, unless you can reconfigure that device to put policy on when it can update and where it can update from.
Yeah, so there's actually a scheduled task that runs on the devices at 2:01 a.m. Where they'll actually go off and get updates, find them, and then reboot itself as well if it needs to do it at the right time. So definitely make sure the time zone on your device is set up correctly so you don't have issues with that. I've actually seen that happen. One other thing to just point out here is, and I've been caught out with this with MTRs. So initially there was some guidance that came out from Microsoft around kind of effectively managing MTR with Intune, things like that. The official guidance from Microsoft now is do not use Intune to manage your MTRs that way. Let the MTRs kind of update themselves, treat them like we do our Teams clients. You know, they get updates when they're released. Typically, as James said, the updates, usually when they release an update to MTR, it's 10% globally. So if you've got 100 MTRs, 10 of them will have the updates before you see anything else start to get updated. And when I started playing with Intune, it was trying to control that because this particular organization didn't want 10% of their devices to have a different look and feel than the others. It was one of the updates where Microsoft actually changed the interface and they didn't want to have to train users on the new change. But it actually ended up causing more problems than it solved. It actually caused some updates to be applied that in the wrong order, which caused some problems. So the guidance is whether the domain joined or not, and I'll just touch on that again in a sec, let the update service kind of do its own thing on the MTRs and access the internet and do it that way. On domain joining, if you're going to join your devices to the domain, Microsoft have very specific guidance that's published on Microsoft Docs about what you have to do before you do that. Do not just join an MTR to the domain. And the reason why is that it's a Windows 10 device that wants to do things that normal computers on your network normally aren't allowed to do. And group policy will break the device. So for example, when I boot up a Microsoft Teams room system, like I have sitting behind me here, it automatically boots into an application or it signs into a Skype account, still named Skype with no password. Group policy usually won't allow that. It will then automatically execute applications. Normally group policy will block that because that might be a security issue. So if you go and join it to the domain, all of a sudden you're going to inherit all of these group policies that can actually break your device. So if you do want to join them to the domain, you need to make sure that you've got a separate container and that you're restricting what group policies apply to it. Microsoft document what that process is. You do not have the same problem with Surface Hub because Surface Hub is running Windows 10 Teams Edition, which has nothing to do with Teams. It's just called that before Teams even existed. That actually ignores group policy when you join them to the domain. It only picks up certificates via group policy. So just be careful of that. And there's no kind of rollback with an MTR. It's not like you can take it off the domain and everything's fine. You then have to usually re-image it to fix it. Okay. Thanks, James. Windows Team Edition, not Teams.
You get that product group very upset, you will. Okay, so coming back to another question from Sean at QTech, fellow co-worker there. Sean asks, has there been any progress on developing the client-side APIs for things like the attendant console? I've not seen anything in the roadmap, and I also haven't seen anything in the stuff that I'm doing, unless Vac or Peter has something. I'm not aware at the moment. I know the guys have been focusing a lot on the calling APIs. The client API is still a bit of it's on the backlog. Have you guys got anything else on that?
Can we share?
This is an Andrew Bobby question, right?
I'm just thinking about the use case other than cookie team.
Yeah.
So attendant consoles are a big one. So things like
think of it. Teams client is a headless device. All the magic done in a service. Why would you want to kind of back the remote end APIs? You know, you probably want
maybe another way.
But maybe another way. So we've got customers with existing capability with contact center that happen to use the local API integration method with the Skype for Business client. Okay, if we can't have that particular architecture with Teams, that's fine. But what's the alternative? So if Microsoft's not developing the capability, how do the partners provide, the Enchhouses and the Matt Landises, etc., how do they provide that capability?
Service level API, because think about it, you interact with the service. think kind of on an architecture level. You're not interested in clients unless you want to extend it. But seriously,
I agree with you.
Change every 2 weeks, right? Every 2 weeks, things are changing, and you hooking at the back of the change. You probably need the whole division that sits. And plus, we're not going to be sharing what we're changing. We can't stop the updates coming out just because the vendor is not picking up. So what we're saying, service level API, that's what you want to have. And everyone like Genesis, NICE, recorders, call center, everyone are hooking at the back at the service level API.
That's right.
I think that's the answer, right? That's
checking what the latest is with the with Genesis Landis. They are actively working with Microsoft at the moment on their contact center integrations, and there should be some news around that very soon. We can't say exactly when, but yeah, it's definitely some updates coming there.
Yeah, and I think that kind of the conference kind of capability that's happening in the cloud now for phone calls, which is what the recording compliance recorder uses to kind of tap in and record calls and whatnot. If I was a betting man, I'd say that same architecture is how you then do contact center type stuff, right?
Exactly. Think of it when a couple of days ago, I got a request from customers saying, we want a CTI screen pops on fire up a client, blah, blah, running on that. First question was, do you really want to run contact center on team? No, it's need to be different, right? So you probably run the software, and if you're going to pick up a control of a call, you probably want to pick up straight from the service. And I think in a beta API, if you look at some of them, we give you that kind of information already. So to be honestly, my message is no different to what I was doing a year ago or 2 years ago. Look at the server-side APIs. Don't wait until we launch it. Go look into betas. More or less what's in the beta going to come out, become a mainstream. You want to do. And if you today, you've written all your product based on a Skype client, you probably want to rethink of it. You really want to rethink on how you're going to work in a cloud model, because I don't think so. Other than Avaya, I don't think so anyone really going to open up and give you client side. Basically.
No, but I think to reframe the question, this is how it was done in the past. We're not really wedded to that. Like, I don't care if I have local API access or not, as long as I've got the capability that I want from my users. So as long as I have an attendant console, as long as I have a contact center option, I'm not wedded to that. It was just that local remote control is how it used to be done. Don't need that anymore. And I think the key piece that we're missing is the official call control API that allows those contact centers to basically remote control at the service level in the cloud to do what they want to do.
That's right. And another dilemma, to be honestly, the reason, I hope no one's going to post this or tweet this because I'm saying it. The reason we are so delayed is not because we're really delayed, because for a very long time, and I know exactly people who have been sitting and chatting with the same folks on the other side, we've been asking, tell us what you want to do. And the only message we've been reading, just give us API, we'll figure out. We're like, no, we can't just go and code. Tell us which scenarios you want. Tell us what kind of capability you want so we can build it. We can't just go suddenly build stuff and it may not fit what you really want. Because look back at Genesis and Skype integration, seriously, I wouldn't even call it integration. That was just pushing a presence from one point to another. It was actually literally, it's a madness to take a trunk calls into Skype so you can terminate them and redirect them back to Genesis for them to take a control. It wasn't really integration. So we've been asking for a long time, tell us what you want. They wouldn't tell us and we would say, well, we were not cutting it. This is the reason why it's taking so long to basically come back. That's why actually the reason it is being now kind of enforced into a much quicker delivery, because at the last Ignite, basically, Andy Bybee sit down and said, we can't wait anymore. We're just going to come up with something, at least it's a good starting point. And that's where we went to the Ignite. I think the first announcement did with the previous build. When we actually went to the build, the first time we showed to what kind of APIs we're going to give. There was a call control API, like calling APIs, there's a meeting APIs. We gave them a framework. We said, okay, these are building blocks. Start thinking about it. Yeah. So it's not that simple. So anytime when you have people coming, be very, very careful. It's it's very complex.
Yeah.
All right, coolio. Well, and to get back to your question, Sean, I know Matt is working on something that is cloud side. So have a chat with him. Stuff I can't really talk about on this call. Dave Saunders asks a question about, we've encountered an issue with not being able to unmute participants after first muting them. Now, this is obviously okay when they're running a Teams client, but if they're on the PSTN client, they can't unmute themselves. Now, I can take that one. It's fairly simple. It's a big privacy thing. Yeah. It's and long and short of it. If I've, as a host, if I've got the ability to unmute you, you might be having an argument with your missus or your kids, or you might be talking about something confidential. I shouldn't have the ability to unmute you. If I try and unmute you and you're using the Teams client, you'll get a pop that says the host wants you to unmute yourself, but I can't physically unmute you because for that safety and security reason. And unfortunately, there's no way for us to do that on a PSTN call. So it just comes down to a usability thing. Encourage users to join using the web client or the Teams client, and then if they're on a PSTN, just prompt them, hey, press *6.
It's the same with the camera as well. There's heaps of questions at the moment from schools saying in issues with, turning on camera if students turn it off. It invades privacy, unmuting and noise in, definitely, versus being able to turn someone's camera on so we can see if they're actually doing their schoolwork, but then you're invading privacy and seeing into a household.
Yeah, we don't want to be like...
Actually, we are working particularly for meeting rooms. I don't think so there is a work happening for client. There is a work happening in a meeting room spaces to get if you have a TMR, you can MTR, sorry, if you have an MTR, you can go remotely and kind of control a bit of that camera. That's something we are working on. But I agree with you. It's first of all, it's a privacy issue. Secondly, well, it's a bit of a legacy. Originally, we had no attendee or presenter concept. So it was very, very hard.
And let's not forget that Microsoft goes with security and privacy first, not features, unlike some other cloud-based conferencing.
I was going to do that, Jab. We don't install web servers on your machine to make joining a meeting easier. There's at the end of the day, the attendee should be in control of everything that they do, and understand that it's a usability thing. That's why user adoption training is so important. That's why encouraging users to either use the app or the web app is important, and change adoption. It's things. The world moves forward. It's the only thing that really is constant is change.
It's interesting with the current climate. There has been an increase in some of these adoption challenges because, you can't walk over to someone's desk and show them. Certainly with things like running live events or even with meetings, if a person is sitting in their study or at their dining table or wherever they're working at home and they can't work out how to unmute their mic or they can't work out how to share screen, it is actually really, really testing the patience right now, I think, in trying to have professional sessions. And it's like there's only so much you can do. And I've certainly had very senior execs on live events where on the day they've forgotten and I can't help them if they can't share their content. Because I'm sure you're all aware, a lot of you are probably in technical roles previously. You just get, brought over to the room to fix their challenge or over at their desk. And so, definitely right now with everyone at home, it really impacts adoption and getting those things fixed quickly.
There's a ton of resources available that have been published by the group, but again, it's about getting users to consume that. We understand that we hand people a documentation pack and they look at it and go, oh, that's an hour of my time I don't want to spend right now. So once again, it becomes that make it as simple as possible, but don't invade the user's privacy. All right, Narav asked a good one about checking the roadmap on the one-touch MTR join. So at Ignite last year, it was announced that obviously Cisco WebEx Zoom one-touch dial was coming to MTRs. We haven't seen it as yet. I would say to Narav, under the current environment, that's understandable, the delays, but also it's very common for us to announce stuff, or for Microsoft, sorry, to announce stuff at Ignite, and it to be up to 12 months before something like that is launched. So yeah, it's coming. I can check the roadmap for you, but I haven't heard anything on it yet.
James, can I just add to that before the Microsoft guys chime in? It might have a bit more info than we have. Remember, it's a three parties are involved here as well. So it's not just the ability to join Zoom or WebEx meetings from a Microsoft Teams client and have the kind of native Zoom guest join or native WebEx meeting join from the panel. And keep in mind that that's actually what's happening. I'm not joining from the Teams room system code into those meeting platforms. It'll actually pop like a web client experience, and it'll look Zoomy to me if it's a Zoom meeting, and it'll look WebExy if it's a WebEx meeting. But it's going to work three ways. So at the same time, I should be able to go to a Zoom room and join a Teams meeting, right? So the three parties are playing together. It's not just Microsoft that's working on this. And given, and I'm not being facetious here, but even given that Zoom has basically stopped working on features at the moment to fix a whole bunch of their security issues, there's a good chance that that's been held up purely just because of what they're working on. Now, I'm just completely speculating that that's the case. They've had kind of bigger fish to fry as far as, resolving a whole bunch of things. But keep in mind, it's not just Microsoft in the mix here. There's the three organizations working together to try to do this. Pete and Vakhtang, is that accurate?
Yeah, you're spot on, Damien. And so we're pretty much ready on our side. We're just aligning with now the other two vendors, and they have both been going through a bit of a code freeze, which they're coming out of. So I believe we will have the feature soon, but we don't have an ETA on exact date yet. So
we can bag it, actually. We can say, look, Zoom made announcement worldwide. They put in code freeze for 90 days on anything they do. It's out of our control.
It is. It's why it's very difficult to target a date right now. So
yeah,
they officially said 90 days.
Yeah.
Cisco's affected too with the COVID lockdown. I mean, we're pretty lucky here in Australia. We don't think about it much because we've come out of it quite well. But a reminder to everybody that the States is already up to 80,000 deaths. So they are taking it very seriously. Not
all of them.
There's at least one person in America that's not taking it so seriously.
Let's not get into politics here. No, I'm not. No.
Guys, it's a question. Would you do it with WebEx before Zoom was ready, or would you have to wait?
Look, it was originally no. Yeah, it was actually Cisco was ready to push, but look, it's I don't think so. The message says it has to be all three of them. That was the intent to get them all three at the same. Zoom delay wasn't a COVID related. Zoom made announcement that the delay has to be related because they're freezing any dev to fix their security issues. That was their delay. But look, target was around July. Why don't you talk to your Cisco counterparts?
There's just salt there. All right.
And look, just want to finish that. There always is cloud video interop today as well. It's available, and if you've got that everyday need for video interop, we can provide that through three providers that are certified today. So.
And Pete, can I call out my M365 session from yesterday, which is a recording, I think is online now, which covers video interop for Teams and how you can do it and all that. So if you do need interop and you need some kind of clever workarounds, I actually do cover a few of those, like how I can actually join a Zoom meeting from a Teams client. Right, you can actually do that if you're in Teams only mode using Federation. So yeah, definitely check that out if you want to know what you can do today before we get the kind of native guest join into the WebEx and Zoom platforms.
Yeah, I will say for people that have looked at that stuff before, if you looked at those interop solutions 12, 16 months ago, take a look again. They are so much easier to license and implement now, whereas before they were complete and utter dog's breakfast.
That's right. I want to bring another point, actually, another focus to that point. Think about how you're going to bring that device into meeting, because if you are inviting someone, you can't invite someone's Zoom room system or Cisco WebEx because you're not in the control of his resources. Talk to your customers and ask them a question. How are you going to get that external device that you're invite on someone on the meeting room you have, which means even when that's ready, that's going to be changed to the routines users doing it, which means now they need to book their room on their end. They need
I think there's two scenarios, Vakhtang, that I see. So one that comes up in education a lot. Customers just have a requirement in-house to have both Teams, Zoom, and or WebEx under the same roof, because RNet on education does a lot of Zoom, but they're using Teams for the rest of the university or something like that, right? So that's one use case. But the second one you're talking about is when you get that invite from somebody else, I will still be able to send that invite to my Teams room system if I want to forward it to a room and join the Zoom or WebEx meeting from that room, similar to what I can do today, where if someone sends me a Teams meeting from outside and I forward it to my Microsoft Teams room, I get the join button. So the Teams room code, at some point, I don't know exactly when it happened, but it relaxed what it was looking for inside the XML or the header.
We do, but what I'm trying to say, people, there is a perception that everything is just gonna magically go. You're just gonna walk into a Tomb. I had so many customers told me, so I can just walk into Tomb System, enter CPURI and dial. No, you have to take that Cisco or Zoom meeting, and by some way you need to deliver across, right? So that is a factor. Until it is ready, you can discuss about those topics with your customers. And maybe there's going to be some bit of a change. I was in a discussion the 2 days ago with customer who was a mix of some operation on Cisco, some on Teams, and it was so much complexity was involved in a way, because if I book a meeting or you book a meeting, how it's going to look, but I can't invite that. There's so many kind of dependencies come there. So spend the time right now in the situations of actually how this flow is going to work, and start from the flow. Don't go into the solutioning design. Is it going to be native web or is it going to be CVI? Go into flow. Not different to what we've done 5-7 years ago when there's a Polycom and Skype interop. We never throw technology in. We first went back. Let's look at the workflow. Who initiates? How initiates? Workflow at the end will tell you actually what's going to be the interop model.
Yeah, and in that session, and I'll post a link. Oh, James has already done it. Thanks, James. But basically what I talk about there and what Vakhtang's talking about, that kind of meeting creation, meeting join workflow. When we did it with Polycom on premises, or when we did it with Acano on premises before Cisco brought it, or XRP, whatever, we always made sure that we didn't have more than one way to create that meeting. Because as soon as there's a second button in your Outlook client, then you've lost your users. Like 50% of them will do it the right way, 50% will do it the wrong way. You need it to all be in that one workflow. So, and this goes also through to cloud video interop for Teams. So the way that it presents is very similar to the old school days. I don't change what I do. I go into Outlook or Teams and I create a new meeting, and there's some additional information that pops up that allows an endpoint, HTTP3 endpoint or whatever, to join my meeting, right? But I don't have a second button in Teams that's like for external join if you're not Teams or something like that. The workflow is really important, and I definitely take your point, Vakhtang, which is, I definitely agree with you. Like the workflow is not going to be optimal, particularly say an organization is trying to use Zoom and Teams and God forbid WebEx as well in the same environment. But the reality is when we talk to customers and we're talking about trying to get equipment into the room or whatever it happens to be, if we can't tick that box, then it's a problem, and it can affect the rest of the team's rollout for individual users, and the rest of the team's workflows and the rest of the team's capabilities gets affected purely because of this kind of meeting room interop. I'll say limitation. It's not a limitation. It's a different platform, right? So I think just being able to tick the box is, half the battle, really.
Yeah, I agree, and I think just have to be. Keep in mind the intention for this use case is for that occasional join, and for the majority of customers, that sending a meeting invite from a different platform to an MTR, for example, will have to come from a trusted source, right? Otherwise, I think most organizations today do not let other organizations book their meeting rooms, right? So if you cut a Zoom invite, for example, from another org, it's going to be difficult for you to forward that or send that to a room device to press join anyway. So it is going to be more for those cases where I'm an organization where I use WebEx and Teams, or Teams and Zoom, that combo. I'm in transition, for example, I want to support both. And in those cases, a lot of the times you're going to need to join those both platforms so often that probably CVI or Cloud Video Interop is probably the better way to go anyway. So it's going to be interesting when it comes out and how well it's adopted and used.
Okay, any other questions?
There was another one around
managed meeting rooms from David. Yes, David King was asking, is managed meeting rooms out of the beta trial yet and ready for Australian deployment?
So it is today for Australian customers as of this month. It's not officially launched as yet, but it is available now for Australian customers in selected countries worldwide. So this is where it is a Microsoft service where we can actually, on the customer's behalf, remote manage their meeting rooms. And so there's two parts to this. There's the modern portal administration of a Microsoft Teams room. Today you can do a phone. In the near future, it's in tap at the moment, you'll be able to do a Microsoft Teams room, meaning as soon as you register the device to your tenant, you will then be able to manage that device in terms of software updates, configuration, some analytics, etc. The next step up from that is a Microsoft managed meeting room service on top of that, where Microsoft will manage that, or either one or more meeting rooms on the customer's behalf, and that's a paid for service. So just making that clear, and that's been in beta for some time, and it's just become come out of beta for Australian customers. And so there's a pretty good demo here, which I'll post, a click-through demo, which I'll post in the chat, that you can run through, and it'll give you, I guess, the experience from the portal. It is a separate portal that you log into that you can then get an inventory list of your devices. You can get the status. You can actually get the status of all the peripherals connected. So you have a camera down. So you have a BIOS update required. You can get all that information, get analytics on how the rooms are being used. Really good for deployments where you may have managed AV contracts, but they don't have any Microsoft skills, for example. So that's a good way to have an overlay. So, in terms of pricing, we can probably have that conversation offline, if that's okay, because it is customer dependent. Yeah.
Just a quick one. So James, what you posted as well for my video link, that was the calling one that I did last week. There's also a video interrupt. Yeah, there is a video interrupt one from this week that's not up yet. So if you head over to M365, okay, yeah, so m365may.com, you'll find that stuff once it's online. Thanks, Pete, for that link. I've been playing with it. I quite like it.
Okay. Michael White asks, Michael White, what does local media optimization mean for Telstra TCO customers? Any impact? No change. Long and short of it. Local media optimization is when you have the SBC at your local premise, and what it allows you to do is to have the media going directly to and from that SBC rather than going to the cloud. In this case, you're still hitting the Telstra SBCs. So even with local media optimization, it doesn't make any change to TCO at all. Sean points out it's great to hear it's close to release, obviously talking about managed meeting rooms. Is there any timeline for release out of TAP for the admin center view of MTRs?
As a device, right?
Yeah.
We've got phones and collaboration bars today.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's in tap, and I don't think it's going to be released until it's ready. So I think it's safe to say second half, maybe potentially this year. Yep.
You heard it here first, folks.
Cool, yeah, well, we've still got 14 minutes left, so has anyone else got any questions? Otherwise, we might go into some plugging for some other M365 May sessions. Or, Lorian, is there anything you want to say that's coming up this week or next week? Or, guys?
Not anything specific other than we're not even halfway through the month in terms of sessions. Still have a lot of content to come. We have a huge closing speaker that I'm not going to announce just yet. Probably will either tomorrow or early next week. So yeah, there's plenty of sessions. So yeah, Damien's still got, I think, another 2 sessions, 1 or 2 sessions.
One to go.
Oh, well, I think James, you've got some. There's a lot of team sessions still to go, including one from me and I think even Megan. So.
I've got some fairly nerdy ones. People of the user group will have already seen. Oh, that's a terrible screenshot, Andrew.
That's terrible.
But yes, I'm representing my TeamSpot one, which was actually originally inspired by Lorian. He has to take a lot of credit for that. And I'm doing a deep dive into how voice routing works, how SIP works, how those sorts of things work. So those sessions are coming up too. But there's plenty of stuff. It's free to attend. Sign up, check it out. Once you're signed up, you can look at the playlist and go through any of the sessions that have already aired. I know I'm trying to find time to do it. Is to watch Damien's session on voice. I'm still learning stuff to these days. Going to these things, even if you know everything, helps. It helps keep you current. Stuff changes. The only way to keep up with it is to keep learning. And events like these are fantastic to go along to and learn these things, especially when they're free. So thanks to.
And may I make a suggestion? Teams documentation should be your starting point. You're going to question. First, check the team documentation side. If you don't find it there, then actually go around.
Yeah,
there's a few gaps in the team's documentation.
I'm
actually helping the product group actually plug some of those holes.
Yeah, same here. I think that's part of the MVP requirements now is submit pull requests on .microsoft to fix all the spelling mistakes and technical errors in the documentation.
But still, it should be.
Well, actually, the whole thing around live events. So M365 May is actually run 100% on Teams, and almost every session is actually run on live events. And I've actually got a call next week with PG because we have found a whole bunch of quirks, things that just are not documented around federated and guest producers and presenters in Teams live events. There's literally no documentation on it. But Vaktang's right. Go there first, and if you don't find it, then go elsewhere.
Where is it?
Yeah, that was a jab at me because I emailed Vak instead of looking at the documentation because I couldn't be bothered. Peter has also posted. Yeah, I know. Peter has also posted a link to the Microsoft Ignite sign-up page. So for those that aren't aware, all Microsoft events until midway through next year have gone virtual. I'm not saying this is the case. I don't know any better. I don't have any insider info. But when the registrations for Ignite go live, I would sign up very quickly. If Build is anything to go by, Build was free, and Microsoft have sent swag out to the first, I think it was 10,000 registrations. So get in on that early if you are looking at going to Ignite. Put in your leave, attend the sessions. We did the same for MVP Summit. We all attended remotely. It worked fantastically. Register, check it out.
Do you realize this is going to be a year and a half for me before I get to eat a decent American bacon?
I want to go to Waffle House again. I miss Waffle House. It's like not good for me food, but yeah.
I think we all miss Waffle House, James.
The one thing I will say, going to America, I miss salad. It's very rare. I think Justin and I.
Water that's not coffee. Like I don't do coffee, and I don't do tea.
I'm going to do my best.
I don't do coffee either.
I'm going to do my best to get this back on track.
And see if we have any
final questions before we.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Just how much he's going to be editing this video before.
No, as is, mate. As is, it's fine.
Taha, will the recording of this be on the meetup page? So I will post, like I usually do, the slide deck, recording, etc., and put a link out via meetup. But what I'll probably do as well, Lauren, is get this video to you so you guys can do your M365 posting magic as well, get it on YouTube.
Yep.
Yeah, so it will be available, yes.
And then me pressing enter too fast before Teams could replace the emoji. All right. Any other questions? We've still got 9 minutes.
Actually, I've got one request. If your customers asking you if they actually want to understand when and how they can search their emails from Team, ping me. Sorry, they can search emails through Teams. Ping me. I want to hear it.
Okay. And maybe if we have any sorry.
No, I'm not interested in you. Customer.
Yeah.
We are customers.
Oh, come on.
I want to be able to search my team messages and go to the thread that I was looking at rather than just finding that message. Like Discord and the S word does.
I'm in a team and I want to search my email. That is the thread.
So I've been moving and doing as much search as I can these days from Microsoft Search through the new web browser, right? So whether I need a document that was attached to an email or a document in SharePoint, a document in my OneDrive, whatever, I've tried to make that the kind of central place. It'd be great to see that develop more and that become the, improve the search in Teams that way, right? And actually leverage what you guys are doing.
The wrong guy. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I thought you were asking the question.
Teams, if you want to search your emails through Teams, I really want to hear it.
That's
and I want
Microsoft Search integration.
I want to talk to customer with all the relative relations.
Can we just get all the relevant? Can we get all the siloed search components of Microsoft and just get them all in a room?
Just give me the customer to talk to.
Okay,
that's simple.
Maybe to round out, we can do this. So thanks for that, Vakhtang. Pete, any final comments? Final comments from the panel?
Not really from my side. All good.
Thanks for that, Pete. That was great.
I think we're all good. All good here. Okay, cool. And there was one more question around we didn't hit. That was around very. It was from. Let me just scroll up. I think Peter had a question around troubleshooting meeting connection issues in Teams. There is, for every tenant, we do provide access to core quality stats and meeting and overall experience in Teams, meeting experience, high quality, poor quality, and that's via the core quality dashboards. So take a look at that as a tenant admin or as a role-based admin. Take a look at that, see how your tenant is performing. You can also upload your subnet information into that. That's a good place to start, but always, it's always the shortest path to your from your location to Office 365 is most important. Do you have a good connection? Are you using VPN? Are you split tunneling? All these things, we provide a lot of guidance around that since COVID-19. We'll try and post some links through Damien and James on that as well to help you guys out.
Yeah, so Pete, I actually recently I did a presentation this week on that specific topic. So just I put together a new slide deck specifically for Teams, network readiness, basic going over all of that, including the things that normally get in the way like VPNs and proxies and make sure ports are open. But the tools as well are really, really useful today. So if you're looking at troubleshooting an individual user's issues, that's call analytics, and you get to that from the user tab in Teams. You go and find the user, click on voice or not voice, analytics, wherever it is, and you can see calls and meetings, and you can see it that way. Call quality dashboard is the big picture. So for my entire organization, what are the trends? And if I upload building data, so subnet information, mapped to buildings, mapped to regions, I can actually kind of find trouble areas like a switch that's not behaving because 90% of my failed calls are actually on the subnet in building B, right? You can do that kind of stuff. The other tools that are really useful, so there's a network planner, more of a kind of modeling for how much bandwidth you need per site that's built into the Teams portal. And the last one is the network connectivity test, right? So this was a command line driven tool that is now wrapped into a kind of GUI tool that you can run. And what that's really useful for is if you've done the network readiness piece and you've advised the firewall guys, I've got to have these 4 UDP ports open and TCP 443 and port 80, and you need to whitelist all these IPs, these 3 subnet ranges to Microsoft and all that stuff. How do you know that they've actually done it? So with this tool, you just run it up on your computer, you run start, you click start, and it runs 2 tests. The first one will actually test connectivity on a UDP port to those Microsoft IPs and make sure that those ports are open. And the second part of the test, we actually send an audio file out, a 17-second audio file, wait for it to come back, and then report back to you jitter, packet loss, packet reorder ratio, those types of things. So it's a really good tool that I've used with customers where they think they've got ports open, and I just jump on the network and run it. And I was like, well, you don't, because I can't get to any of these IPs. So, and then you can go back to the network team with some data, right? And that's without using any third parties or investing in, Nectar and, integrated research or IR prognosis or any of that stuff. There's some really good tools available, but definitely try to do, I find it much easier to get in front of the network and security team early on in the piece and have a proactive discussion rather than coming back when users are having issues and trying to have that reactive discussion, how we get into arguments over split tunneling and ports that should be open and centralized internet versus local egress and all that other kind of stuff, right? So try to get out in front of it. And, my company does that kind of stuff, right? We actually try to have those conversations. I'm sure others that are on the call here do as well. It's definitely a very valuable part of the process. And it's not just for Teams, it's for all of Office 365. Right? Teams more, you notice it more maybe because of media paths. Media is a little bit more susceptible to issues, right? But you should do it for all of your Office 365.
Yeah, absolutely. And +1 for getting in front of it to begin with too.
Did we lose Lorian? Is he gone?
Yeah, he's gone. He's unfortunately got to do dinner with the kids. Okay. So I will say +1 on making sure that running those tests and doing things to make sure it works first.
Thanks, Vaktang, by the way. Vaktang has left us. Thank you.
Yes. You don't want users to have a bad taste in their mouth because then they'll just continually say, well, Teams sucks, Skype sucks, whatever technology sucks. If they have a bad experience to begin with, it doesn't matter how great you make it by the end of the in a month's time, they're going to have that bad taste in their mouth. So,
and on that point, actually, just while we've still got Megan here, if she's still here, just on that kind of bad taste and adoption type thing, any thoughts around that? If she's still there,
I think she probably ran off for dinner too.
Oh, we lost Megan too. Okay, well,
yeah,
that all kind of ties in, as James was saying. Bad network experience, user has a bad experience, it takes you 6 months to get them back again.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, I think that pretty much rounds us up. Everyone, you're welcome to hang around, but I think we've all got to go do dinner in bits and pieces. So unless there was anything else pressing that you guys wanted to do, that's going to be it from us.
Yeah, a big thank you for everyone that joined. Thanks to the panel members. Thanks to Peter and Vaktang, both Strants and James for joining. Hopefully this was still a useful session. Not as fun as being in person, but I think this is probably not a bad alternative. So thanks everybody for coming along.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone.
Right. Thanks guys.
Cheers.
Have a good night everyone and stay safe.